Hi everyone, and welcome to this tutorial on how to flatten a list of lists in Python. In this video, tutorial will introduce 4 methods for flattening a list of lists in Python. Flattening a list of lists involves transforming a nested list into a single, one-dimensional list. This process is useful in various scenarios, such as data analysis and machine learning. Method 1. Using a nested loop. The first method we will use is a nested loop. This is the most basic method, but it can also be the most inefficient. Here is an example of how to flatten a list of lists using a nested loop. This code will print the following output. Pros and cons for using a nested loop. Pros: easy to understand and implement. Cons: can be inefficient for large nested lists due to multiple iterations. The second method we will use is a list comprehension. This method is more concise than using a nested loop, and it is also more efficient. Here is an example of how to flatten a list of lists using a list comprehension. This code will print the same output as the previous method. Pros and cons for using a list comprehension. Pros: concise and readable code, faster than nested loops for large nested lists. Cons: can be less intuitive for beginners. The third method we will use is the Itertools.chain.from iterable function. This function takes an iterable of iterables and returns a single iterator that yields all the elements from the sublists. Here is an example of how to flatten a list of lists using the Itertools. Chain from iterable function. This code will print the same output as the previous 2 methods. Pros and cons for using the Itertools chain from iterable a function. Pros: efficient and memory friendly. Can handle arbitrarily nested data structures. Cons: less straightforward to understand than other methods. The fourth method we will use is the numpy array function. This function can be used to convert a list of lists into a numpy array. Once the list of lists has been converted to a numpy array, we can use the flat attribute to get a one-dimensional iterator that yields all the elements from the sublists. Here is an example of how to flatten a list of lists using the numpy array function. This code will print the same output as the previous 3 methods. Pros and cons for using the numpy.array function. Pros: efficient for large datasets. Part of the NumPy library. Cons: requires installing NumPy. You've now mastered 4 powerful methods to flatten lists in Python. Each method has its strengths and weaknesses. The choice of method depends on the specific requirements of your application. For simple cases, a nested loop or list comprehension might be sufficient. For larger datasets or more complex data structures, consider using Itertools or NumPy for better performance. In Part 2, we will discuss about these 4 methods in deeply. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment below. Thanks for taking the time to watch. If you want to see more like this, be sure to subscribe and hit that like button.